I had one, man. At like 11 o'clock in the middle of the day, I hit a box call real loud, and one just like gobbled way off. Like I could hear like, oh, I'm like, ooh. And I probably covered like 200 yards real quick, and I hit it again a little softer, and he gobbled again, and I kind of moved, and he was still a little ways off, and I moved maybe another 40 yards and got set up, and I sat there and I got kind of impatient, and I hit a call again, and he gobbled again, but it sounded like he was farther away almost. I'm like, crap. And where I was sitting at was like um, on a side of a ridge, and then there was a valley, and then it went up the other ridge, and he sounded like he was up on the other ridge somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh man, maybe he went like on the other side of that other ridge, and I'm like, crap, he's going away from me. And then I knew there was a creek down in the bottom, and I thought maybe he didn't want to cross. Maybe he was like, well, not interested in crossing that creek for some reason. You know how they do stupid things like that where they won't cross certain things. So I was like walking down there real quick to get across that creek, and I was going to call to him again. And I no more than got across that creek, and I looked up, and here he was just walking to me, and I'm like, gosh, dang it! And he saw me, and I'm like, if I'd have just sat there for 5 more minutes, I'd have seen him coming down the low area. But come to find out, there was like a cut that I didn't notice that went off the valley, and he was down in there gobbling. He that's why he sounded far away, because but he was coming. He just was in a low area. But
I've
that
had
was
that hills where they sound like they're coming in, and all of a sudden you're getting further and further away. And you
yeah,
start moving in, you realize they went in a dip, and that's why they sound further away.
yeah. That's
Because they're
exactly
going
what he did.
downhill and back up.
Yep, yeah. He instead of coming straight down the ridge into the big valley, he like must have went down like into a little side cut and was coming in. But I'm not kidding you. Like it was like, I mean, I was set up perfect and everything for where because I could tell because it was real thick in the bottom and it kind of opened up. I'm like, oh, if he's going to come, I bet he'll come through here. And I set up right there, and I mean, he was coming right to that area. But anyway, that was my biggest like screw up one, I guess, that I got frustrated with. I just should have been more patient, but my mind got to racing about like, oh, he's moving away, or maybe he's don't want to cross that creek. I'm going to get across that creek at least and set up again. And I don't know. If I'd just been patient, I'd have killed him.
Yeah,
But
it's a little give and take. I mean, I've blown a lot of them because of impatience.
oh
You
yeah,
when running gunning, but if you there's also plenty of times where I sat too long, and you think, well, if I would have just put a little more time into finding a different bird, I would probably,
yeah,
it's give and take. You gotta know when to quit and when not to, and a lot of times you're wrong. I mean, I can't tell you how
yeah,
many times you sit in a spot and you call a bird, and you call him, and he doesn't come, and you leave, and you come back through, and you see that bird standing where you were. I've learned that if you're working them, a lot of times eventually they show up. Like the hens get sick of them,
yeah,
or they get sick of the hens, or the hens go nest, or whatever, and they'll end up. They might be a stupid bird with a pea brain, but they remember where they heard that calling, and they show up.
yeah, yep, yep. I had one, and this was right before I was getting ready to leave. I hunted the evening, the second evening, and I left in the evening there before like last light. And I got on this one tom that was like gobbling out in the middle of a field. And in the middle of this field, there was like a drainage in the middle of it. And there was a few trees and stuff. Well, I was in the woods, probably like this field's a giant field. And I hit that box call again. This was after I had screwed this turkey up, like maybe an hour and a half after it or more. Um, and that tom gobbled out in the middle of that field. I'm like, oh, he's out there with hens. I guarantee it. There's no, um, and I got to the edge of the woods where I could almost see into that field. I couldn't see him because the field kind of did some dips and stuff. And I called again, and he gobbled again, but I could tell he was walking away in the field. I was sure of it this time. There wasn't the dips weren't that big. I just couldn't see him, and so I kind of just set up on the edge of the field and just kind of waited. And I probably sat there for 2 hours. He stood out in that field for 2 hours and he ended up having two hens with him. But every time I called, he would get a little farther away. And I think I'm sure those hens were like, you know, pulling him away from me. Yeah. And I sat there for 2 hours and I kind of got impatient. I'm like, gosh, this is a long time to sit here, you know? And I got on my Onyx. I noticed I could kind of get closer to him. Uh, if I kind of went in the woods and circled around, I could get in that little draw. At least I could see him, you know? So I did that and I got set up about 150 yards from him. And I got set up and I was sitting there and I called again and he gobbled. Um, and like maybe 5 minutes later, I couldn't actually see him at this point in time. There was like a tree in our way, but I mean, I could tell where they were now. Like I could pinpoint right where they were. And then all of a sudden, those two hens like came into the sight to my left. They came out from behind this tree, and they were heading away from me. The two hens were. They weren't spooked or anything. They're just walking away. I'm like, ah, crap. They're gonna just pull him farther away, you know. And they didn't. They never did. That Tom never did leave that field, and he stood right between me and that tree where I couldn't see him. And those hens left, and he sat there and sat there and sat there. And I called one more time, and then I was like, I'm going to shut up. And I'm like kind of texting Jacob this entire time, and he's got giving me tips and stuff, you know, on what I should do at this particular time. He hunted this property I was on, and I ended up just kind of putting the call down and waiting. And kind of was hoping that he would get curious and like, where'd that hen go, you know, and come over to me. Well, instead of coming to me, he like popped out of the right side of that tree and he like went up this little like slope on the field to get like a higher view. And he just like paced back and forth looking up my direction. He was looking for a hen, you know, and he would have been able to see it. I was literally sitting in this like little bush area that was in that little drainage. You could have seen anything around me other than me, you know. He couldn't see me, but and he didn't see anything, and he finally just like turned around and walked straight away from me. So I like got up real quick and circled all the way around that big field and got up by it was actually by the road now, and there's like maybe 50 yards of woods between the road and the field. And I was just walking along the field edge. I could see the field now, and he wasn't in the field anymore. And I got to where I thought maybe he'd be, and I called again, and that sucker was probably 50 yards from me in that woods whenever I called. And he just like, oh, he like freaked out, you know. And I just plopped down into the field and on the edge of the field in the woods. It was like a CRP area. And I just sat down on that CRP, and it was like there were some little trees and stuff, and I kind of hunched down on these little trees. And I thought he would come out in front of me. It's kind of where I set up, you know, and it would have been perfect. He would have, but he ended up coming out of the field, like straight, like behind me and to my left a little bit. And I had my camera over here on my right side, and he was only 30 yards from me when he came out, but I couldn't get everything over and then shoot. I just couldn't do it. And he ended up like working his way back, and he went back in the woods and he started gobbling again back in the woods. And he came out in the field again, and I had repositioned, but he came out farther than I could shoot him. And he came out and looked around again, didn't see anything, and then he freaked out again and left.
Some of those older birds got to see the hen, you know?
Yeah.
They know better.
Yeah. But he got excited whenever I hit that call, and I was only 50 yards from him. Like you know, he couldn't see me in the field. He was like down in the woods, and the woods goes like down to the road. Mm-hmm. So he couldn't see up in the field at all. So I was like, "Oh, you're freaking dead!" And he just came out the wrong spot.
Sometimes I did better without the decoys though, because they'd come in looking, and they'd eventually make it over to you looking around. But when you put the decoys out, sometimes those older toms would hold back about 50 yards.
Yeah.
Try to make the hen come to them.
Right.
Come right to you.
Right.
Well, what started working with us when we were running gun was to put the decoys way behind us. Like to put them like 20 yards behind us. Because then if they come to 50, 60 yards,
they're in range. That's a good idea. I probably would have killed him that first time. I mean, I'd had a better chance if I'd had a decoy. If I'd have set a decoy out when I had him in the middle of that field, you know. Mm-hmm. But I didn't have one with me. I didn't care. I didn't have one with me. So, but it was fun. I mean,
it's hard with the running gunning to carry decoys and guns and cameras and.
Oh man, yeah, yep. I had one with me the first day. I carried a hen with me, and the second day I'm like, I'm not bringing this stupid thing. I'll just do without it, And then I was like, crap, I wish I had it. But it is what it is. But it was fun. I'd roosted birds both mornings. I was sitting on top of birds both mornings, so I was in birds the entire time. There's only one on the first day. There was a little lull there for a while, but that last day, that second bird, or I guess it was technically the third bird I got on. I was on him for like 5 hours. I mean, I kind of stayed on his case until the very end there. Whenever he finally got tired of me screwing with him and got out of there, but he would have been. I really wanted to. I really wanted to bring him home with me, but oh well. If you want to watch another video, click right here. But don't forget to subscribe before you leave.